So, this is my very first book review, and it is for the James Patterson book, Out of Sight, written by James Patterson and Brendan Dubois. And the structure of this is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the plot of the story, give you a general overview, and then to make sure that I don't discuss the spoilers, things like that, I'm going to give 3 pros and 3 cons of the book so that you can make an informed decision about whether it's something you want to read. I have taken that from a couple of booktubers that do similar things just because they want to make it as spoiler free as possible, and they feel that that is the best way to do that. So I decided to do a similar thing. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to dedicate a few minutes to discussing the twists, the endings, the things of this book that will be considered spoilers, because if you have read the book, they are definitely something I wish to discuss. So I will put a clear indication of when that section of the video is going to come in so that you don't accidentally stumble onto the spoilers. And if you want to read the book and you don't want anything spoiled for you, make sure you end when the notification comes up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bit of a description of the book, tell you a little bit about it so that you have the information. I'm not going to read the synopsis, that's very boring for you to watch me read something, but I'm just going to give you something from memory. I may miss some important parts out, and also I don't know all of the information. So, to start off with, the book is about the book is about a woman called Amy Cornwall. She returns home from a tour in Afghanistan, is that right? Yes. She returns home from a tour in Afghanistan, and she finds, as soon as she enters the door, that her husband Tom and daughter Denise are not there. She instantly knows something's wrong. She finds them both missing. She finds the house relatively untouched, aside from, I think, Denise's clothes on the floor. And she finds a burner phone on her table, and she gets a call from somebody who tells her that they have taken her family, and the only way she can get them back is by doing something for them. She has to go across states, find a person that has not been disclosed to her, and get that person, bring them to the kidnappers, and then they will do an exchange, her family for this individual. She's not allowed to involve the police or any of her colleagues or friends from the armed services, and she has, I think, 2 days, 3 days, something like that. She doesn't have long. She has a couple of days to do this. And the book follows her deciding whether this person's life is worth her family's, and her journey on going through all of that whilst on her way to get the person. It follows her husband and daughter in the kidnap situation and how they survive and how they cope during that time until it's time for the exchange. It follows the kidnappers and gives you some motivation as to what they're doing, as well as their experience from their point of view of having Tom and Denise as hostages. And it also follows Officer Rosario Vasquez, who is meant to be interviewing Amy. Amy is classed as AWOL from work. She's under trial. She's awaiting a hearing, and she doesn't turn up because she has to do this to save her family, and she can't tell any of them about it, so they class her as AWOL, and Rosario Vasquez has to go after her and find her, basically. And it follows her and her journey, her personal development through the job, and also trying to find Amy, things like that. And it follows all of them, and then it comes together in a phenomenal conclusion. It's a fantastic book, honestly. And that's it. So now it's time for the pros and cons. So, to start off with, I'm going to tell you about the first con of the book. I'm starting with the con because I want to end on a positive, and it seems only fair to do it that way. So the first con of the book is I felt that there was, I don't know, there was just a bit of a storyline that began building up in this book. I think it started building from the first chapter, maybe. it started building from very early on in the book, and then I felt that eventually it was going to build up and it was going to lead on, and I thought, right, I know exactly where this is going. I am so excited for it. I am all for it. I am very looking forward to it, and it was building up and building up, and then it fizzled out. It really didn't amount to much. It amounted to what I thought it was going to amount to, but not to the level that I wanted it to. So I wasn't so much disappointed, because I felt like what it was building to has perhaps become a bit of a cliche in some sort of thriller, and I was quite glad to avoid the cliche. It left me with very mixed emotions, because I was glad to avoid the cliche, but at the same time I'd got it in my head. I knew where this was going. I was actually quite excited, not only that I got it, but that it was actually leading us there. And then when it didn't, I was a bit like, oh, then why? It made it seem a bit pointless, really. Side note, some of you may have realised I'm not filming in front of my books as usual. I'm actually a little unwell today, so I decided just to film this from my bed, because when I film in front of the books I end up sat on the floor, and it's really not comfortable, because sometimes filming these videos can take about an hour each. So I decided just to do it from bed today. Hope you forgive me for that. So my first pro of the book, and it's something I absolutely love and talk about all the time, is that this book has strong secondary characters, and I absolutely love them. Our main character, Amy, her husband and daughter are kidnapped, and those two characters, we get to see part of the narrative from their perspective, well, Tom's mainly, and the emotion and the feeling, it really makes you feel as though you're there. They are so strong with their emotion. They are such good and alive characters that they are fantastic. Their bond as father and daughter, you get to see so much of that, and it is amazing. And it's great to see that. I absolutely love that. Another character, Rosario Vasquez, she's the woman in charge of hunting down Amy, because she is classed as officially AWOL from her unit, from work, from something, because she is awaiting a hearing for something. It's not really important to what I'm trying to say. And Rosario Vasquez is in charge of looking for Amy, and you get to see her as she's hunting Amy down. Amy's hunting for her family, and you get to see that almost like cat and mouse chase, and her feelings towards her own team, plus towards Amy, plus towards other characters that she encounters along the way. And her character is just so strong. She develops so much throughout. She starts, I'm trying not to spoil it here, but she starts going into the book as the naive young, like a naive young cop almost. I don't want to say cop, because they are very geared towards the armed forces. They're not police, but she's young, naive, new member of the team. And then as she goes through, she develops, she begins to learn more about the job, about her role, about where she stands within the team. And it is so good to see not only that character development, but the strength that she sees going through that role, and I absolutely love it. She's perhaps one of my favourite characters in the book. But overall, I cannot stress enough about how good these secondary characters are. The primary character, Amy Cornwall, she is good, don't get me wrong, she's a good character, but for me, what made this book so good, what made it the 4-star review it was, edging on 4.5, but I decided to just stick with 4, were the secondary characters. They made the book for me, so 100% would totally recommend them. So the next con that I have, and again, as I've just mentioned with regards to following the point of view of the husband and daughter of the main character, and then this other officer who follows our main character throughout, we also get to see the perspective of the kidnappers, and that is where my con comes in. I did not like that particular perspective. I don't know why. I feel like usually when you get to see it from the perspective of the villain, there's just so much intensity there. You get to see their motivations, their feelings towards certain things. I thought when you see the perspective of the villain in this book, you would see why this family was chosen, why he wants so much to carry out the deeds he's doing, things like that. And personally, I just didn't get that. I did not get that from the story. I didn't get that from the characters. I felt as though it didn't really explain anything. There was a distinct lack of anger there, and perhaps there wasn't meant to be anger there, but for me, I feel like if you're a villain, there's always some kind of anger, and I felt that there was no anger. It was just cool, calm, collected from start to finish, and that didn't really make a compelling character for me. And there are multiple characters who are in that point of view, and I just don't think any of them really hit the mark. I really think those characters missed the mark for me, and that was where the negative part of it was. I didn't dislike the chapters that were heavily involved with them. I just found them the least compelling, and so I would class that definitely as a con for the book. That because I am a fan of seeing it from both perspectives, from the villain and the protagonist. I love seeing that because then you see them clash and you go in with all of the information. Saying that, I also am a fan of finding out information as the main character does as well. I feel like that's quite good because it comes as quite as a shock to you. But you did get to see that in this book. But none of that came from the antagonist. You got to learn information when the protagonist learned the information throughout by following her perspective. And I wanted it to elevate the storyline, elevate the almost like twists and turns of what was going to happen in the book throughout from the antagonist perception. And that just didn't happen. So yeah, it missed the mark for me. So that's where I'm at with that. The second pro that I have, and it is a very good one, it's a pet peeve of mine when it's done wrong. So it did very well to do that, and it was that the end of the book. I've got to do this really carefully without giving away spoilers. The end of the book was not wrapped up in a chapter. It was not done in a couple of pages. It was not building up to something massive just to have it done instantly. It played out quite well. It played out over a number of chapters, over a number of pages, through a number of perspectives, and that worked really well, because there is nothing worse than when you follow a story from the start and all you get at the end is a page telling you how it ended. And this book didn't do that. They made you sit through all of it, and there were some high points, there was some low points, but you had to sit through all of it, and it was excellent to see that. It was definitely one of the best endings I've seen in a book in quite a while, because it did take you through it. It not dragged it out, but it brought everything out. You didn't just get it quickly wrapped up. You got the full narrative from everything. It was fantastic. So yes, absolutely big up the ending of this book. Okay, my final con, and it is my biggest con. It's the one that got me most, is I don't think the main character, Amy, I don't think she had the character development or the character depth that the secondary characters had. We followed her all the way throughout. We followed her journey of wanting so much to have her family back. We followed her journey of, can she sacrifice a person to save her family? Can she... this part's in it where she has to make impossible decisions and do unspeakable things to save her family, and you get to be along for that journey and say, can she do it? Can she do horrible things? Can she sacrifice everything for her family? And I thought, wow, that is going to be amazing. That is really going to feel like a gut punch if something happens like that. It's going to be such emotional turmoil to be a part of that. And I just don't feel like that. I don't feel as though it was written well. I feel like her character, she explained a lot of it. This is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at with this. Can I do this? Can I do that? But there was no emotion there, I don't think. I really struggled to get a lot of emotion from that. I felt as though we got to see the trauma, but for me, I felt this woman's family's been kidnapped. She has lost them and she's been told exactly what she has to do, and it is not good. And I think she only cried a couple of times, and it was just, I sat in my car and sobbed and then moved on. And you're like, really? Like, just get me more, get me really into that. Show me how impossible a decision that this is, that this woman has to make. And I feel as though they did that with all of the secondary characters, and she is the main one. She's the one that should have had all of the attention, and they didn't give it to her. I feel as though maybe that was intentional. She's an intelligence officer. She's a strong woman. She works for the armed forces, things like that. Maybe that is just where the character is. You lose the raw emotion. You're so much better at prioritizing. Forget the emotion. This is what I have to do. This is the mindset I have. And I think fair enough, that works for that type of character. But at the same time, she's human. She might be this amazing armed forces person that can switch off her emotions and do what she has to do, but she's a mother that has just lost a child. She's a wife that has just lost her husband, and she's a woman that's been told that she has to do horrible things to get them back. And I feel as though there is much, I don't think anybody could hide that emotion. And I feel like on the times that she got to give out that emotion, it just wasn't strong enough. And that was my only negative of it. I feel as though it got better towards the end. I really do feel it got better. But for the most part, I don't think there was a lot of emotional depth to the character. My final pro of the book, and it's something that's very similar with all of James Patterson books, are the chapters are so short. The chapters are roughly between 1 and 5 pages long. Sometimes you get 1 or 2 that are a couple pages longer than that. But on average, really around roughly 1 or 5 pages long. And for me, that's perfect, because I'm not a person who can read long chapters. I do a lot of my reading when I'm in bed. I can't keep my attention on it for that long. If I've had a long day and I am tired, I don't want to get in bed and then read 40 pages or 20 pages or something just to get a chapter done. And with James Patterson books, the chapters are so short, I could perhaps read 40 pages via 8 short chapters than 1 long one. And it just breaks it up much more. It makes it so much easier, and it makes it such an easy read because the chapters are so short. It delivers everything it has to, but in such a short amount of pages, and it makes you feel as though you're getting through it a lot more. If any books with short chapters, I just think it makes it so much easier to read. For me personally, you might like long chapters. I know I do not. So they are my pros and cons of Out of Sight. Hopefully I've given you enough information to make you decide whether you want to read the book, whether you don't want to read the book. Hopefully you can make an informed decision. And now, guys, this is it. Remember, this is my spoiler section. So if you don't want to know any of the spoilers, if you want to read this book, make sure you switch off now so that nothing is ruined. Switch off now. Okay, now I really have to talk to you about the endings of this book. If you've read the book, oh my god, I need to know what you thought of it. Please don't comment with anything specific, anything spoilery, because there are people who may want to read the book who haven't yet, and I don't want that to be spoiled for them by them reading the comments. If you have anything you want to discuss about it, please comment on my Goodread review. If you want to, feel free to email me. We can discuss it over email. That'll be fantastic. But yeah, don't put it in the comments. Otherwise, it just kind of goes against the point of I don't want it to be spoiled for them. So the first thing I want to talk about, they shot Denise. She was shot. She is a 10-year. Is she 10? She's a. I'm gonna say she's 10. She is a 10-year-old child. She was shot right in the head. That I did not see coming. She was just shot in the head. Oh my god. I couldn't get over that. I cried. I mean, the next chapter you found out that it just grazed her. She weren't dead. The guy that shot her had intentionally missed because even he couldn't do that. But I cried for 10 minutes before I could carry on. And it happened mid-chapter. It wasn't even the end of a chapter. It happened the start of the chapter. It was just, he put the gun to her head, shot, bang, gone. I was like, oh my god. Right. I don't even... I couldn't cope. I could not cope. Now, I want to mention the thing that I mentioned earlier where I said I thought it was building up to something and then fizzled out. I knew Tom was involved. It was obvious Tom was involved somehow. And when I said it was building up, his involvement, I knew it was going to come. It was coming. But the way I expected it was that I thought he was going to become the big bad. He was the main villain. And he wasn't. And I said I'm quite glad for that because it's become a bit of a cliche that the main character's partner is the one that's in charge of it all. Like it's so overdone now. Yeah, it started out as one of those surprise twists that really aren't that surprising anymore. And yeah, so I'm glad. I'm glad it didn't amount to that. But I feel as though it was just so well done and so well written that if that was the case, I probably wouldn't have been upset. I probably would have been shocked. I probably would have been like, oh, right, I get it. Okay. Whereas the fact that it didn't, I just felt it was building so much to that and then fizzled out. If it's hinted at and then it happens, you're like, whoa, okay. But then if it hints at it and then it doesn't happen, you're like, sneaky red herrings. Whereas that it was built, it felt like that was inevitable. That is the only way it was going to go. And it wasn't. And my laptop's just turned on. And I felt as though it was built up so much that Tom was going to be so heavily involved. Like the fact that when they went to collect the man, Paleo's father, when it was building up to collect him, they said that the man that was collecting them was Tom Cornwall. I was like, I couldn't deal with it. When Amy hacked into his cloud for work and found things, I was like, oh my god. When he said very early on in the book, which made me like, that was the start of the build-up, said things like he knew exactly why he was there. I was like, oh my god, it was definitely because of him. He has done something so bad and now they're getting him for it and he is the villain. And I was like, oh, it's so obvious where this is going, but it's done so well that I don't care that I know. And they didn't. I was just a bit, I was just a bit disappointed. Okay, the last thing, very spoiler related, I have to discuss, because it is the thing that I'm still not over. I read this book very early in the month. Not over it. I'm hurt. I'm very hurt. Rosario. If you've read the book, you know. She died. How? Not how, I know how. I was there. It put me through hell. And I think that's another thing that made it such a good book, that it wasn't the cliche of, oh, everyone survives. No, she died. Yeah. It hurt. And as you know from every time I mention it, if a book hurts, it means I love it. Because it made me feel something. and I had a deep connection to it. But I didn't like her at the start, and then I grew to love her. I grew to fully understand everything about her, and then she died. And I'm never gonna get over that. I am never gonna get over it. I loved her. I thought she was a fantastic character. I felt like she really. I just felt like she really grew as a person. She became so much stronger, and then she died. I mean, how she died, fair enough. I think that was so heroic to die saving Amy and then Denise and things like that. But it bothered me because I really did care for her. I get so emotional over the deaths of fictional people. It's very unfair. But yes, that is it. That is all of the spoilers that I had to just get out there from the book. I didn't really discuss them much because I don't really know what to say about it. I can't really discuss them with people who haven't read the book. So if you've read the book and you want to discuss these further, if you haven't read the book and you're just interested in these spoilers because you've got no intention, you just wanted to read about them and maybe even chat to me, again, don't put them in the comments. Goodreads comment or drop me an email. I'm more than happy to talk about it. I would love to get to know your opinions and how you felt about any of these spoilers. So yes, please do that. That'd be fantastic. And that is all from me. I post every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday. So goodbye.